There's a certain kind of quiet that only exists when you're home. Not the quiet of boredom, not the kind that feels empty, but the quiet that feels like safety. It's that feeling when you hear the distant hum of the refrigerator, the soft click of a clock, and realize that for once, nobody needs you to be anywhere else. It's not loneliness, it's peace. Most people don't understand that. They'll look at someone who loves staying home and assume they're antisocial, withdrawn, maybe even afraid of the world. But for some people, home isn't a retreat from life. It's the one place where they can actually breathe. Because out there, in the noise of constant comparison, pressure, and performance, they lose themselves. At home, they find who they are again. Maybe it started when they were younger. The classroom, the bus, the crowd. Places filled with noise and chaos. Music for some, those spaces felt like survival tests. You had to speak louder to be heard, pretend more to be accepted, and smile wider to seem okay. So they built an inner world instead. A world that was softer, slower, more forgiving. That's where home became more than a place. It became a sanctuary. Psychologists say that people who love being at home often have high sensitivity to external stimuli. That means their brains process the world more intensely. Bright lights, loud sounds, too much conversation. It can feel like a flood. So the quiet of home isn't avoidance, it's balance. It's the nervous system saying, here I can rest. But let's be honest, it's not just about overstimulation. There's something deeper, something almost spiritual about it. Home is the only place where we get to take off the mask. The social version of us, the one that smiles on command, the one that knows what to say, when to laugh, how to fit in. That version can finally dissolve when the door closes behind us. And what's left? The raw, unfiltered version, the one that doesn't need to impress anyone. The one that just exists. It's strange, isn't it? How a person can be surrounded by people all day and still feel unseen. But the moment they're home, sitting by a window with a cup of tea, they finally feel visible to themselves. That's the quiet magic of solitude. It's not isolation, it's intimacy, but with your own soul. We often romanticize extroversion in our culture. We celebrate those who are constantly busy, constantly out there doing, posting, performing. We treat silence like it's suspicious and stillness like it's laziness. But there's a quiet power in people who know how to be alone without feeling lonely, because they've learned that fulfillment isn't always found in noise. Sometimes it's found in the pauses. There's an old saying that goes, if you don't go within, you go without. For people who love staying home, going within isn't avoidance, it's alignment. It's how they process emotion, recover from overstimulation, and reconnect with what's real. Think about it. When you're constantly surrounded by people, your identity starts to fragment. You become a version of yourself for each audience. But when you're home, you're the only audience that matters. Of course, there's a fine line between solitude and withdrawal. Even the most introverted souls need connection. But here's the paradox. People who love staying at home often have deeper relationships, not shallower ones, because they don't waste energy on superficial connections. They crave the kind of bond where silence feels comfortable, where you can sit with someone for hours and not need to fill the air with words. It's presence, not performance. When psychologists study solitude, they find something fascinating. People who spend more intentional time alone tend to score higher on measures of creativity and emotional intelligence. It's not because they're smarter, it's because they're reflective. They process their feelings instead of drowning in them. They observe their own thoughts instead of running from them. In that stillness, ideas form, clarity emerges, and emotional wounds quietly begin to heal. Think about the times you've had your biggest realizations. They probably didn't come when you were at a crowded party or lost in a noisy cafe. They came in the shower late at night in your room, or during a quiet walk when no one else was around. That's the hidden power of staying home. It gives your mind the silence it needs to speak clearly. But here's what's ironic. Many people who love staying home carry a secret guilt about it. They feel like they're missing out, like life is happening somewhere else, and they're failing to keep up. Social media makes it worse. Endless photos of parties, trips, and smiles make homebodies feel like they're doing something wrong. But the truth is, the highlight reel of other people's lives isn't the full story. Everyone's chasing peace. And for some people, peace just looks like staying home. There's something deeply human about needing a place to retreat, to pause, to reset. In ancient times, monks would go to mountains or caves to meditate. Today, people do it in bedrooms, reading corners, or tiny apartments filled with plants and music. It's the same impulse, the need to return to stillness after the chaos. The home is just the modern temple. And here's the psychology behind it. When you're at home, you're in what scientists call a low-threat environment. Your body stops producing as much cortisol, the stress hormone, because there's no need to defend or perform. That's why your thoughts often feel clearer at home. That's why you suddenly get emotional when you're alone. Your guard drops, and all the feelings you've been holding back finally rise to the surface. It's healing, disguised as quiet. But not everyone understands this. Sometimes people will say things like, "You need to get out more," or "You're wasting your youth." What they don't realize is that staying home doesn't mean doing nothing. Some of the most meaningful growth happens there. Reading, reflecting, journaling, dreaming. These are all quiet revolutions happening behind closed doors. And the people who love staying home aren't necessarily avoiding the world. They're preparing for it. They're recharging, rebuilding, re-entering. And when they do step out, they bring calm instead of chaos. There's also a psychological comfort in routine. The brain loves predictability because it reduces anxiety. When you know where everything is, when the space feels familiar, your mind relaxes. For someone who loves staying home, this predictability becomes sacred. It's not monotony, it's emotional regulation. Every object, every small ritual, from lighting a candle to making the same morning coffee, becomes a way of telling the nervous system you're safe now. Yet, in a world obsessed with productivity, that kind of stillness feels rebellious. We're taught that to be valuable, we must always be visible, always doing, always achieving. But people who love staying home quietly challenge that idea. They prove that meaning doesn't always come from motion. Sometimes it comes from stillness, from being rooted enough to notice the rain tapping against the window, from having the time to think deeply about who you're becoming. And maybe that's why homebodies often have a rich inner world. When you spend enough time in solitude, imagination starts to bloom. You begin to see connections others miss. You notice the poetry in ordinary things. The way sunlight hits a wall, the way dust dances in the air, the sound of distant laughter through thin walls. There's beauty there, quiet but undeniable. It's a slower kind of happiness, one that doesn't need to be captured or shared. Some people will never understand that kind of contentment. To them, silence feels heavy, and solitude feels like punishment. But for those who love being home, silence is not emptiness. It's music. It's the sound of finally being enough. There's a beautiful paradox hidden inside people who love staying at home. They're often labeled as detached or distant. But the truth is, they feel life too deeply. Every conversation, every noise, every glance, it all leaves a mark. And when the world gets too loud, their instinct isn't to escape it, but to protect their own peace. It's not fear of others, it's care for themselves. You can tell a lot about a person by the way they treat their space. Some people's homes are full of light and music, plants stretching toward the window, the air warm and calm. Others prefer dim lighting, soft blankets, the faint smell of coffee or candles. Each home becomes a mirror of the person inside it, a physical manifestation of their emotional state. The quiet ones build warmth. The dreamers build comfort. The thinkers build order. And within those walls, they create worlds no one else ever sees. When psychologists study the link between solitude and creativity, they find something profound. People who spend more time alone often report higher levels of originality, empathy, and imagination, because solitude gives them the freedom to listen to their inner voice. Unfiltered, uninterrupted, unjudged. When you're surrounded by people all the time, your thoughts adapt. You start thinking in public language, shaped by how others might perceive it. But when you're alone, your thoughts unfold in their native form. And that's where real creativity begins. Think of all the great artists, writers, thinkers, and inventors. Many of them loved solitude, not because they disliked company, but because they needed space to think, to dream, to wrestle with their own ideas. Virginia Woolf once said, "A woman must have money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction, but that truth applies to all humans. We need a room of our own, metaphorically or literally, to understand who we are." People who love staying at home have learned that the outside world doesn't define them. They don't need the noise to feel alive. They don't need constant validation to know their worth. Because when you spend enough time with yourself, you stop chasing the applause of others. You start building peace that no one can take away. Still, solitude can be confronting. When the distractions fade, the thoughts grow louder. And sometimes that's uncomfortable. That's why not everyone can stay at home for long. The silence starts to reflect back what they've been avoiding. But those who embrace that silence learn something powerful. That peace isn't the absence of thought. It's the acceptance of it. They learn to sit with their own emotions, to watch them come and go without running. That's emotional maturity in its purest form. And this is what psychology tells us, that comfort with solitude is one of the strongest indicators of self-awareness. People who can enjoy their own company have a more stable sense of identity. They're less swayed by peer pressure, less dependent on external approval, and more guided by internal values. Because when you've spent enough time in silence, you can hear the difference between your own voice and everyone else's. That's how wisdom grows in quiet places. Of course, it's not that people who love staying home never get lonely. They do, but their loneliness has depth. It's not the ache of emptiness. It's the longing for connection that feels real, not rushed. They'd rather be alone than be surrounded by people who make them feel invisible. That's not arrogance, that's discernment. And when they do find the right people, they love deeply, quietly, completely, because they know the value of energy. They give attention carefully, affection intentionally, and trust slowly. And that's why their relationships often last, because they're built on depth, not noise. But there's another side to all this, one that's less talked about. Sometimes people fall in love with home not because they're peaceful, but because they're tired. Tired of being misunderstood. Tired of the world demanding versions of them that don't feel true. For them, home is the one place where they don't have to perform. It's not escapism, it's recovery. Psychologists call this emotional decompression. It's what happens when you've spent too long pretending. When you come home and feel the sudden need to lie down, to do nothing, to just exist, that's your body finally exhaling. You've been holding your breath all day, managing impressions, regulating emotions, suppressing reactions, and the moment you walk through that door, everything you've been holding drops to the floor. That's not laziness, that's healing. People who love staying home often live with a heightened sense of empathy. They absorb other people's moods like sponges. They notice tone, body language, small changes in energy that most miss. It's a gift, but it's also exhausting. So they retreat to restore themselves. And that retreat allows them to return to the world calmer, kinder, and clearer. The more you study this, the more you realize staying home isn't just about preference. It's a personality rhythm. Some people are wired for external stimulation. They thrive on movement, interaction, chaos. Others are wired for introspection. They thrive on pattern, rhythm, and peace. Neither is better. They're simply different ways of being human. But because society praises constant motion, the quieter types often feel like something's wrong with them. In truth, they're just tuned to a different frequency. There's beauty in that, because the world needs both. The ones who chase and the ones who reflect. The explorers and the observers. The ones who make the noise and the ones who listen for meaning inside it. And often, it's the listeners who help the world make sense of itself. They're the ones who translate chaos into understanding, noise into narrative, distraction into depth. And maybe that's why so many writers, philosophers, and artists feel most alive when they're home. It's not that they're escaping the world, it's that they're trying to feel it more deeply. They turn solitude into art, stillness into clarity, and quiet into creation. Their homes become extensions of their minds, a physical canvas for their thoughts. Every small detail carries intention. Every corner has memory. But even for those who aren't artists, the psychology remains the same. Home is the space where we process life. It's where we sort through the emotions we couldn't express outside. It's where we return to ourselves after being too many versions for too long. And that return, that homecoming, is one of the most important psychological needs we have. Because no matter how far we travel, the truth is, everyone needs a safe place to land. A place where they can drop the armor and just be. For some, that place exists in people. For others, it exists in silence, four walls, and a warm light. There's something sacred about those who choose stillness over spectacle. It takes courage to say no to noise, to step back from the endless need to be seen, and to find value in invisibility, because in that invisibility, something extraordinary happens. Authenticity returns. You start to live, not to impress, but to express. You start to see life, not as a competition, but as a conversation. And suddenly, the walls that once felt confining begin to feel like wings. That's the secret psychology of people who love staying home. They're not escaping life. They're embracing it differently. They're noticing it, feeling it, honoring it at a slower rhythm. They're not running away from the world. They're creating a version of it that feels humane again. A version where the heart gets to breathe. And when they step outside, when they finally do decide to go out, they bring with them something rare. Calm energy. They don't add to the noise. They carry stillness like a gift. Because once you've found peace in solitude, you stop searching for it in chaos. You stop demanding that others make you feel at home. You carry home inside you. So if you're someone who loves staying at home, don't apologize for it. Don't let the world convince you that peace is unproductive or that comfort is complacency. You're not missing out, you're tuning in. You're doing the inner work most people are too busy to notice. And that work, quiet as it seems, is what shapes everything else. Because when the world feels uncertain, when people are searching for meaning, it's often the quiet ones who've already found it. Not in crowds or noise, but in the gentle rhythm of ordinary days. The warmth of morning light, the softness of evening rain, the sound of your own heartbeat, in the stillness of a room that finally feels like yours. And that's the beauty of it all. The home isn't just a building. It's a reflection of peace earned, not given. A sanctuary built out of patience, presence, and authenticity. It's where you meet yourself again and again, until one day you realize you were never really alone. You were just coming home to yourself. Sometimes people assume that staying home means you've given up on life, but often it means you finally stop running from yourself. There's a strange peace that comes when you no longer feel the pressure to chase every invitation, every trend, every weekend plan that promises fun but delivers exhaustion. You begin to realize that joy doesn't always need witnesses, that the best moments sometimes happen in complete silence. The sound of rain hitting the window, the smell of something baking in the oven, the way the light moves across your floor at 400 p.m. You start noticing details you used to miss. The way your heartbeat calms when the world outside is distant. The small satisfaction of doing something at your own pace. The way your mind opens when it's not constantly fighting for space in the noise of others. It's not isolation. It's a reunion with your own mind. And yet, even in that peace, there's an undercurrent of guilt, because we live in a world that glorifies visibility, where being seen feels synonymous with being alive. If you're not posting, if you're not out, if you're not participating in the collective rush, people assume you're fading away. But maybe fading from their eyes is how you come back into focus for yourself. Maybe quiet living is not about disappearing, but about finally existing without performance. At home, you learn that solitude isn't the absence of connection. It's the reset button that makes real connection possible. You begin to see that not every friendship needs daily updates. Not every dream needs an audience. And not every day needs to be productive to be meaningful. There's beauty in the invisible life. In moments that no one claps for, in progress that only you can feel. And maybe that's the secret. People who love staying at home are not running from life. They're walking toward it slowly, intentionally, without the noise. They're rediscovering what it means to simply be. Not to impress, not to achieve, but to feel. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is nothing at all. Just sit quietly in your own company and realize that at last you're enough.